Initially, what I was facing in the family household was verbal abuse. Then it went to physical abuse and I would say torture as well, where I had to leave for my own sake. In fact, I was given the ultimatum: give up what I'm doing or get out of the house. And the Muslims were praying to a black box in Saudi Arabia. When you get all these racist people down Trafalgar Square, so we don't want no Islamic law here and there and whatever. I'm thinking, guys, do you realize where you are? That the actual name itself is Arabic in origin.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the show. My name is Muhammad Aminur Rahman and you're watching another episode of the Tarikhology podcast. My chief guest today is Abdul Malik Tailor, the founder and CEO of Halal Tourism Britain, and he grew the company into a respected organization, winning awards and collaborating with prestigious organizations. It is recognized by global media for his expertise and dedication to promoting Muslim history and halal tourism. Abdul Malik Tailor has pioneered Muslim tours in Britain and internationally, influencing others to become tour guides. He has led groundbreaking events like the Islamic Arts and Heritage Festival, attracting audiences and positive reviews, which we could get into later. His company was awarded the World Halal Travel Tour Guide 2023. Appreciation from the London Mayor was included in the influential Muslims list. He's touched thousands worldwide through guided tours, particularly appealing to student groups. His organization welcomes all individuals, promoting and understanding and showing appreciation for cultural diversity. He's been through a spiritual journey with deep exploration of faith. His family background reflects a rich tapestry of religious exploration. And finally, he has organized successful events like the Islamic Arts and Heritage Festival, as well as a radio show on Muslim history. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How are you doing, brother?
Alhamdulillah, not too bad.
How was your journey in?
Yeah, it's pretty much straightforward it was.
So, which area did you come from?
Came from West London.
Oh, mashallah, came from. How long did it take you to get?
It took about an hour and 20 minutes.
An hour and 20 minutes, mashallah. We appreciate you coming on today. Alhamdulillah. To who you are, could you tell us a bit about your upbringing and how it shaped who you are?
I was born not too far away from these studios, opposite Sulaimani Mosque in the London Borough of Hackney. Okay. The block of flats don't exist anymore.
They don't exist anymore.
Demolished, but they're named as it's called it began with F. I can't remember the name of the house, but the house name does exist, which has been put onto another new build.
Okay.
And then we moved to Lower Clapton.
Okay.
And the local police station used to be now where you find the Olive Tree School, Hackney Police Station. Okay. But because we were getting burgled too many times, family decided to move to Walthamstow. Okay. And in Walthamstow is where I took my, when I became Muslim, I was living there. But I did actually take my Shahada in a mosque that's on the London Borough of Hackney. Okay. And that was in the Ramadani Mosque in Dalston. Okay. It's the first Turkish mosque in UK. But my upbringing, I was born into the Hindu faith. And I lived in the semi-Jewish neighborhood in Lower Clapton. Okay. Went to church. Yeah. And so I went to a Church of England school, and therefore I had to go to church. And I had a position in church where I was putting up the hymn numbers. And so I had an upbringing where I was a religious practicing Hindu. I was the most religious practicing Hindu in my immediate family, and out of all my cousins. I did go to India, performed pilgrimage to see a man god over there. Okay. And I came back, and I used to believe in multi-faithism. So we used to celebrate different festivals from different religions: Sikhism, Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism. But when it came to Islam, there was nothing there. And I realized that afterwards when I was fasting Ramadan. Although I didn't do the complete month, it was Monday to Friday. I did a couple of Saturdays. I broke because I was at my friend's kebab store. Okay, fair enough. And Sunday was the family lunch day. And I was saying the du'as as well. But obviously, I wasn't doing the salah. I wasn't Muslim anyway. At that time, I was told it's good to pray from some of my Pakistani friends that I had. Okay. And but yes, I became Muslim afterwards, out of all those religions that I was exposed to as well.
You went through all the religions, and
but the one that I knew the least about, I I embraced it, and that's what kind of shocks everybody. So I was a person who believed in God, and my upbringing was like multi gods. So more than one god. God can be reincarnated as well.
Yeah, of course, because you see, as you mentioned, you started off with Hinduism.
Yes,
and then
yes.
You went
my late mother was a Hindu as well, but for the last 17 years of her life, she converted to Christianity, and she was baptized about 3-4 times as well. Okay. And she was going to church about three or four times a week as well.
So she was a practicing Christian as well. Okay.
Practicing Christian.
Coming to your journey through all the faiths up until Islam, what led you to embrace Islam? And would you mind sharing the story as to
I think obviously I had some exposure to Islam. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't nothing. One of the earliest part was in primary school. I remember there was a children's show that was called Zigzag, and on there they were doing like the different religions. And when it came to Islam, I remember vaguely that it was mentioned that the Muslims were praying to a black box in Saudi Arabia. Okay. And at the same time, I did have a Gujarati Muslim friend who I was told by my father not to hang around with him because the Muslims could never be trusted.
Oh, okay. What was your father? Was he?
He was a Hindu. He was a Hindu, but he died 1 year after I became Muslim. Oh, okay. And there was this religious abuse, I would call it, by my family, my relatives, where they wanted me to perform the last rites of my father according to Hinduism. And I said, I can't do that because I'm Muslim. But people didn't really care about my feelings, and I didn't have any Muslims visiting me at the family house either. And that was like a very isolating experience. And I wrote a letter, left it under my old pillowcase in my old bedroom. Because I had to leave because of my own safety.
Because it got that bad, you had to leave.
It did. Initially, what I was facing in the family household was verbal abuse. Then it went to physical abuse, and I would say torture as well, where I had to leave for my own safety.
How old were you?
I was 18 going on to 19. I was 18 years old when I became Muslim.
And you ended up leaving at 19?
Yes. It just became too tense. In fact, I was given the ultimatum: give up what I'm doing or get out of the house. And then I thought to myself, with all the different experiences I'm having to face, where the dog's chain is being whacked on me, other things have been thrown at me, alcohol has been trying to be being poured down my mouth. I left. And yeah.
Wow. So what drew you to Islam? Or like what was,
and the initial thing that really got me thinking about Islam was looking at there's a mosque in Walthamstow. It's called Masjid al-Umar, or locally known as Queen's Road Mosque. Okay. Because the mosque is on Queen's Road.
Yeah, of course.
And we used to have a pet dog, and I used to walk the dog around for morning walks around about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning. And I used to see the Muslims with the big bushy beards, the long skirts, going to the mosque. Yeah. Initially, I was making fun of them under my breath. What's the matter with these guys? Can't they afford a razor and a pair of scissors, etc.? But then day in, day out, I kept on seeing them go to the mosque. And then it can't, at Fajr time this is. And then it clicks to me, hold on a minute, these guys are praying at a time they've been told to pray, as opposed to myself praying at a time I wanted to pray. And that in itself created a bit of curiosity. What's really driving them to go to the mosque at the early hours of the morning, whilst everyone else is asleep, apart from myself and the dog going for the morning walkies? And that was where the curiosity started from. And I thought to myself, I want to look at Islam. And I went to my Pakistani friend's house and I asked him 3 times, could I borrow your Quran so I can read it? And he said, what do you think he said? No, I can't have it. And second time he said I have to have a bath. I was like, what, just read a book? Because it's a holy book. I thought, oh, okay. So I left and I thought, but something drew me back basically. And I thought to myself, I said to him, okay, I'll have the bath, but could I just read it?
Did that make it more intriguing? Like, okay, you thought there's a lot of procedure that in regards to reading.
At that time, yes. But then when I asked for the 3rd time, when he goes, the Quran's wrapped up, kept on top shelf, and cultural nonsense basically. Yeah. And he'll have to ask his mother, auntie, if I could borrow the Quran, but she's the most practicing person in the family. I said, yeah, auntie's just next door, so you can just ask her. She goes, no, she's got guests, and it seems disrespectful if I was to ask her now. And I said to myself, you know what, forget this, I'm gone. So I left without the Quran. My first Quran I got was the Abdullah Yusuf Ali Quran from my Mauritian Hindu friend that I went to do pilgrimage with to India. And he threw it at me.
They more or less. Oh, mashallah. Okay, so the friend that didn't give it to you, are you still in contact with him?
Here and there, but it's not very often, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough. So your conversion it had a lot of struggles. You went through a lot.
Yeah.
As soon as
I didn't come from the gangster background either. Sometimes I get asked that, did you was a gangster? I go, no. Because I remember in my previous local mosque, I didn't tell them for 1 year that I'm actually a convert to Islam. Then I actually released the information. So, right, Abdul Malik, you're doing a speech next week. And one of the Hafiz who was there is going, oh, mashallah, it's good that you become Muslim. We should know how people, when they were gangsters and how they became Muslim. We should know about it. And I had to stop him there. I said, look, I wasn't a gangster. I'm going, that's a stereotype. The other stereotype we get commonly associated, we did it for a woman. I said, not in this case.
That's usually how it is. For anyone that might not be Muslim watching this, but they're on the verge, but they're probably facing maybe, as you mentioned, verbal abuse, physical abuse, or maybe the fear of like their family finding out. What advice would you give to someone?
See, one thing we've got to remember, this is Islamophobia. That's coming from either from my friends or family. And there's a lot more support out there now as opposed to when I became Muslim. And I will say to make contact with your local convert center, revert center, and see if they can help you out. If you've got any doubts, they can get them clarified for you. And generally, I would say even to the people who are Hindu and Sikh who have the most reservation, I know and my advice to them directly is that I know what you're going through. You're thinking about what the community will say if you were to become Muslim. I went through that as well. And I know other people who have as well. I have a relative who became Muslim and 10 years ago, and she doesn't want to meet me. And I'm like, why is that?
Why?
Because I come from the community.
Oh, okay.
And that shows that she still has that mindset back from those days. Thinking that if I was to meet her, then I might say something to somebody who might reveal where she is or something like that. Or her parents might get back to, oh, look, this person said this person and you met this person, blah, blah. But I left that community. I left all that. To me, it was just nonsense, basically, what the community would say. I'm not interested in that. At the end of the day,
cultural baggage.
The cultural baggage, yeah, I'm not interested in it. But my advice to the ex-Sikhs and the Sikhs or the Hindus who may be wanting to consider Islam, is say Bismillah, step forward, and Allah will actually show you the path that would be far more easier than perhaps even the path that the journey I had.
An interesting thing that I just thought of now, you mentioned that your mother was a practicing Christian. Why was that never an issue? If like everyone else
my father had died 1 year after I became Muslim.
Okay.
And my mother was a victim of domestic violence from my older sister. And I'd witnessed it, and I had to step in repeatedly. And what happened was she wasn't married either. And people say, oh, why is your daughter not married? Why is your son became Muslim, etc.
Okay, yeah.
So she was kind of drawn to Christianity to kind of, it was for her, that was her solace. And that was her community, where she didn't have any strings attached to that type of community, where if you was to go to the Hindu temple, people would be asking 1001 questions, etc.
Oh wow! Okay, so for her it was a safe space.
Yes,
I guess you could say
that, yeah.
One thing you mentioned, the Hindu rites that they wanted you to do on behalf of your father. What are they?
Some of them would have been like to light there's supposed to be a cremation that's supposed to be done.
Okay.
And in Hinduism, it's supposed to be the eldest son who performs it, who lights it. And in my case, it was I'm the only son. So
you won by default.
Yeah,
more or less.
But in this case, I said to people, I just can't do it. So I wasn't the one who lit who initiated the cremation. there was also something even to do like the parts where you actually put flowers around the body, etc.
Okay.
And you'd put on like the spot, etc., and do take part in like hymns, you could say.
Okay. And would you say that your refusal to do so aggravated the Islamophobia you faced?
In some ways, yes.
In some ways.
And it was so much that the pressure was so much, I went back to my place, and that's when I wrote that letter saying I feared Allah and blah, 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 and I don't want to take part in it. And they didn't know where I lived. And it was just because Allah, that the Pakistani who didn't give me the Quran, he was approached because he knew my family.
Okay.
Because where does he live? Because he's just disappeared, he has. And then he came around with my relatives, and my relatives then said, oh, if you didn't want to take part, you should just told us. And I'm thinking, what have I been saying all this long time then?
Okay. Are you still in contact with them like now, or has it?
I mean, my mum and dad have passed away. 2 sisters, my older one, I'm not in contact. My younger one, she married into a extremist family, I would say, that for Hinduism.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you make? Why would you say extremist? Like, in what sense?
Because I know the mindset of the family, and they told her to stop seeing me.
Oh wow.
And for her kids to stop seeing me as well.
Just because you're Muslim?
I'm Muslim. And if they were to continue seeing me, there's that possibility that they could become Muslim.
So they feared that somehow you'd convert them, and for that very reason. And so you haven't heard from them.
So this is oppression of the Hindu woman, as they say. But you won't hear about this. It's not the latest news, is it?
Wow. Based off of all your experiences, would you say that this all shaped the way you viewed the world and what you, because you were soon after you got into tourism, but you're not just any form of tourism, you got into tourism of Muslims within the UK. Would you say that shaped?
When I converted to Islam, I was meeting different brothers and sisters, and I used to ask them, what do you know about Muslim heritage of Britain?
Yeah.
Hardly anyone knew anything. And they could tell me about Al-Andalus. And they were rushing to go there. Some people knew about the Ottomans, and I just found it quite highly odd. You're born in Britain, your parents are born here, or they've migrated here, and you're going to be having kids here as well, but you can't tell me nothing about your heritage here. And that actually got me to take a look at Islam and Muslims in historical Britain. So even when I went to university as a mature student, I was, putting in parts of Islam, parts of Muslims in my coursework. And if I had to choose a full focus group, I was always choosing the Muslims. And when I done that, I had to obviously look at the community development within Britain. So that's where it all started from. And then what happened was I was a male survivor of domestic violence when I was married. And one of the coping strategies I had was to move away from the wife and just do some reading or research myself. And it was literally my coping strategy, and that basically excelled me even more. And from that, I thought to myself, what can I do with all this knowledge? And initially I started off doing workshops, and I had inquiries from some Muslim schools as well.
Yeah.
Some Muslim schools wanted me to go under their banner just to get the publicity, but I said, no, not doing that. Staying independent from everyone. But what happens then, I thought to myself, after I think it was about 3 or 4 months, why do I need to be in a classroom setting for? I can take it out to the streets, have a guided tour.
Yeah.
So that's what I initially then started having, the guided tour. I had one tour, then it blossomed to now we've got probably around about 40, 50 maybe.
Wow.
Different types of walking tours, bus tours, sightseeing bus tours. One can be done on River Thames where we look at Muslim heritage. And people are loving it. And just to kind of like correct your introduction, I don't only target Muslims.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people have this misconception, I'm only targeting Muslims. I say no, 30% of my clientele are non-Muslims.
Wow, mashallah.
And that's, it forms another conversation.
No, definitely. We'll come to that because I didn't know that. Before we get onto that, so when you decided to create Halal Tourism Britain, is that the name?
Well, originally it started off with Islamic history of Britain.
Okay.
Then it became Muslim History Tours.
Okay.
And then it had another rebrand to Halal Tourism Britain. It sounds more appealing. It's more open as well.
So initially, could it be said that you initially targeted Muslims and then realized that it might be a bit too restrictive? So then you rebranded and made it a lot more.
I think the initial thought was to have initially the Muslims.
Okay.
But then I also realized that there were some pockets of the Muslim community that didn't want to pay.
Yes.
And they don't value history. They don't value Muslims who are professionals who actually deliver a form of teaching. There is, in some ways, a mindset as well amongst some Muslims that if it's been delivered by a Muslim, it has to be for free or next to nothing.
Yeah.
And I've said to people, look, I've got my rates. If you want them, you take them. If you don't want to book up, that's fine. And what happened was word had got around to different colleges and private colleges, these are, that there was somebody, it was a Muslim chap who was offering Muslim tours, and that's another form of diversity to do with Britain. I thought, okay, let's try that. They came on it, they loved it, and they said, right, we're booking them out now.
How long have you been doing? How long have you been running?
It's 10 years.
10 years, mashallah. So you've been...
And I also became Britain's first professionally qualified Muslim tour guide. And I didn't even know that when I was applying to become a tour guide.
I didn't know that was the real thing.
Yeah. No, it does exist. Sometimes people do think I don't have a qualification and there's no professionalism involved. I said, no, there is. There's actual courses that you can do. And also you've got CPD as well.
Of course, wow, mashallah. And obviously I saw, because I was looking at your website yesterday, you do museum tours, you do guided tours.
Virtual tours as well.
Virtual tours.
Yep, live ones.
We can come to that because I want to know a bit more about that. Before we get to that, so how do you curate your tours to be both informative and engaging for our diverse audience?
Okay. I mean, to be honest, it's not much different in terms of delivery between Muslim and non-Muslim.
Okay.
However, I do need to sometimes explain to non-Muslims particular vocabulary that we may use. So we're quite used to using inshallah, alhamdulillah amongst ourselves. And yes, the words could slip out to a non-Muslim audience.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, what does that mean? And then I say, well, it means this and the reason why we say it, etc. And what you do find is that the engagement can be enhanced if you use visual aids as well. Okay. Especially with amongst the Muslims. I mean, you're taking them to buildings, locations, etc. But perhaps there's nothing visible there to connect the Muslims. But once you show a photograph, an image or something of the person who was there or what the building could have been, then they can connect to the site more. It's kind of like enhancing that particular experience as well.
Okay. So what would be an example of a visual aid you'd use? Would it be the materials that you have or? Yeah.
I mean, one example could be when we go to the banqueting house in Whitehall and I relay the story about what's his name now? Mahmoud Nouri. And he was a Moroccan ambassador who came in the year 1600 to Britain. What was he doing down Whitehall? What's his connection with it? So I have an image of him, of a painting that was done at the time. So it's one of the earliest portraits one can find with regards to a Muslim being in Britain.
Wow. What would you say, based off of this, what are some of the hidden gems of Muslim heritage that you've uncovered in Britain?
So many. Where do I start?
We can start with, you brought a few with you. Do you want to start with those?
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that.
So if one of my assistants just hands it over to you. So if you want to just explain what you brought and how...
This is part of my Muslim Mobile Museum of Britain. We don't have a Muslim Museum of Britain. If you look at America, they've now got over 5. Australia's working on number 2. But where we are, we don't have a single one.
Not a single Muslim museum?
No. We have an Islamic gallery in the British Museum, but as I explained on my tour there, it has nothing to do with Britain. So Islam there is foreign. It's not domestic. Even the artists they use are international artists and not domestic Muslims or people who are Muslims.
So
not people who are not
British
Muslims. Yeah.
Okay.
But this one is Alhambra Theatre. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I haven't.
No. Have a guess where it could be. So this is actually like souvenirs, they say, from 1899. Okay. Where do you think it could have existed in Britain? How do you imagine it could have looked like?
I assume they would have based it for the Alhambra in Al-Andalus, right?
That's where the name comes from, yes.
Okay, but does it have any relation to it?
The design was like this.
Oh, wow.
And this was in Leicester Square. Ground building, complete with domes, crescents, minarets. It's a mega mosque of its day.
Wow.
People moaning about, mega mosque of today. I'm like, well, what about happened to the one in Leicester Square 100 years ago? That Queen Victoria even visited as well to watch some shows.
Is that still open?
No, it's on the site of Odeon Cinema.
Okay. So
Odeon Cinema, yeah. So it doesn't exist anymore. But imagine that. This is what we had in Leicester Square.
It was called the Alhambra Theatre.
Yeah, and Alhambra itself is a chain of theatres around UK. So you could find one in Birmingham, Bradford, Edinburgh.
Any of them still open?
There's a few, yes, a few.
Any in London or?
No, not in London, as far as I know.
Wow.
There was actually a recent, after COVID, there was a cocktail bar that opened up next door to the site, which was called the old Alhambra.
Okay.
But people who were working, they had no idea what it meant.
They had no idea.
Yeah. So this is like, in itself, evidence of what was there in the past. And obviously, you've got the advertisements here as well.
Wow.
But, that was also the place where there was a Muslim wrestler who's known as the Great Gamma. Started off, obviously, before partition in India. And then he went on to Pakistan. And he was living in Sutton. That's where he was having his practices. But he had his first match in White City. White City is now more popular known for Westfield in Shepherd's Bush. But the name White City in itself comes from, what do you think it comes from? You think it's something to do with racism? That's what normally black and Asian people, it's got to do with racism, I'm like, no, it's not. It's completely the opposite. White City gets its name from a series of exhibitions that took place more than 100 years ago. And they were Islamically inspired in white stucco buildings. And if you looked at them, you can directly see the Indian Islamic influence on them, and that really shocks people where the name comes from.
Wow. Are there any other places like that? Any other locations inspired by Muslim heritage or something in the past?
You got Trafalgar Square, London's or Britain's most famous square.
What's the heritage there? Where does it come from?
Where do you think?
I don't know.
Any idea? Say the word Trafalgar in a Arabic way.
Trafalgar.
Trafalgar, meaning edge of the cave.
Oh, okay.
It's an Arabic word in origin. Trafalgar Square was named after the Battle of Trafalgar, 1805, and it was a coastal battle. The English Navy against the French and the Spanish off the coast of Spain in a place that's called Trafalgar as well. And that's where the name comes from, the Battle of Trafalgar. So when you get all these racist people down at Trafalgar Square, so we don't want no Islamic law here and there, whatever. I'm thinking, guys, do you realize where you are? That the actual name itself is Arabic in origin. We're more familiar with Gibraltar, Jabal Tariq.
Yeah.
Trafalgar is exactly the same, you could say.
Wow. That's new.
I mean, there's more than probably 5 Muslim connections at Trafalgar Square. But that's a discussion for another time, as I say.
You've mentioned the positive impact that you've had on like student groups. Yeah. So what makes your tours particularly appealing to students, the younger generations?
Younger generations, in terms of students, I have to say it's predominantly from the student makeup, it's predominantly non-Muslim students.
Non-Muslim students?
Non-Muslim students. Muslim schools from the last event we met at, the Nida Trust, East London Mosque, that's when schools came and they saw what I had on display, and that's when they made inquiries. So some of them are booking up now.
Mashallah.
But there's been a gap, probably around about 2-3 years, where Muslim schools haven't booked up. I don't know why, but I think it's to do with the fact that you have to pay for it. And ISOCs, I've only ever had one Islamic society do one, in fact, it was 2 bookings in a day. And Islamic societies are not clued up even about the heritage here. When you speak about Muslim heritage of Britain, the Muslims think, oh, forget this, I'm not interested. It's going to be talking about wars and royals and families and blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's kind of like it's mentioned in there sometimes, but it's not exclusively about it. But we look at the journeys of Muslims who come here from the past, what Muslim culture was actually embedded in Britain as well for 1,000 years. And students themselves, when they traditionally tend to be non-Muslims from America, and they're loving it. There's even been students who came on a tour of mine, and then they got taken to the V&A Museum, Victoria and Albert Museum.
Wow!
Look how prestige that place is, and how big it is, and the funding they have.
Have you?
They had a tour there.
Okay.
Have a guess which tour they prefer, my one or the V&A. My one. When it came to the coursework, they wrote about it, saying this was much more better than this, and blah blah blah, etc. And I think one of the reasons is you're not a person from an institution. You've got the independence to relay information. So I can talk about paintings and portraits, how it's the labels of paintings and portraits have changed over time. And you won't even realize what will actually happen. In some of these institutions where I have a tour, for example, Tate Britain, there's a painting there where I was told I was the first person to give an Eastern interpretation of it.
Wow. MashaAllah. Why would you say that, or why do you think that you have a lot of non-Muslims?
They follow me on social media as well after the tour, believe it or not.
Nice, mashallah.
Why? Because I think what they realize is that Britain is a bit similar like to America in the sense that we have diverse communities.
Yeah.
Some people within the student, they're into like human rights, etc., and they want to really know about another culture. Some of them have actually said to me that they are looking into Islam as well.
Oh, wow.
And what they've seen themselves is kind of like perhaps a part of their journey to Islam, you could say. And it's helpful because it kind of contextualizes where the Muslims are in Britain and historically where they've been as well.
Okay, wow, mashallah. Based off of all of that, obviously you said that you've had an issue, or maybe there's the fact that because you have to pay for your tours, Muslims might not be as inclined. And what are some common misconceptions about Muslim culture that you'd aim for your tours to dispel?
Two things which always go and crop up. Number one is to do with why did I become Muslim? And I always say to people, it wasn't for marriage.
Yeah.
People acquaint converts perhaps with terrorism.
Of course.
And but then they realize that I'm just a normal human being. Even the size of my beard itself can create conversation.
Of course. And
people are interested, but people do see it as fashionable as well. I get stopped on the streets and people, non-Muslims are saying, that's a wonderful beard you've got, And so I thought, okay, alhamdulillah, then it makes us human, then you could say. And unfortunately, the media doesn't help us. And when it comes to two types of Muslim communities, the convert community and the niqabi community, we face the most abuse we do. And that is something that I kind of like put into the tours as well. And I mentioned even my engagement with the media. I get media approaching me every month. I do not seek to go out there and publicize myself like, approaching a TV station, a magazine. I said, this is who I am, available interviews, anything like that. They come to me. So that shows you there are people out there who genuinely want to know about Muslim history of Britain. What makes somebody who's a convert to Islam take this up? And then in that whole process, I can actually dispel any myths that they have as well.
Wow, mashallah. How do you balance showcasing Muslim heritage with the wider historical context of Britain?
I say Muslim heritage in Britain is British history. I don't care what people want to say. Even if that comes from the Muslims as well. Yes, it's specifically Muslim history in Britain, I would say. Yes. But if you're looking at British history, the Muslim history that's here, don't separate it. When the converts themselves, they come on the tours, they actually say, we keep hearing it's a Judeo-Christian country. But said that, no, this is Islamic as well. So you have to add this part into it. And that, in itself, people realize that we do have a legacy of Muslim heritage in Britain, but we don't know about it. Perhaps one of the reasons is because we don't study it.
I was just about to say, it's not taught in Muslim heritage isn't that widely taught in schools.
Or if it is in Muslim schools, they teach them about Al-Andalus or now the Ottomans. But Muslim heritage in Britain, it's not really there.
What would you say are, if you had to label three of your most
significant finds?
Significant finds, yeah.
Yeah, I had a feeling this question. I always get this question. I think it has to do with Salah.
Okay.
And it was the location of London's first mosque and that was in 1895. The building does still exist because it was a house mosque.
Okay.
In Camden Town on a road that's called Albert Road.
Mm.
And they used to have a Jewish museum on that road as well. And I did ask the curators there, do you know where London's first mosque was? I said, no, we have no idea. Okay, so it was on the same mosque as where you work, the Jewish museum. And they're quite shocked about that.
Is it, I assume, based on how you're saying it, it's no longer...
It's no longer a masjid because it was the person who opened up, Haji Muhammad Doli, who's originally from Cape Town in South Africa. He had already opened up 2 mosques over there. And then he comes to Britain, and he originally went to Liverpool, and he was a friend of William Henry Quilliam, who opened up England's first mosque that we know of. And then he came to London. He was on the Brent Borough. Then he went to Camden Town, and then he went to where we find the current site of the Wellcome Institute on Euston Road. It's quite opposite side of Euston Station.
Okay.
And that's where the house mosque was relocated to. At that time, the Wellcome Institute didn't used to exist as a series of terrace houses. But then he goes downhill after that. 1900, he was working in Shepherd's Bush as a coachmaker. Then he goes further out. He was living in Chiswick, and then he died in West Ealing, quite close to the West Ealing Mosque. And I did approach them when I identified the last house that Haji Muhammad Doli was living at. And what happened then, I managed to find his grave. And I remember that occasion in the grave, I actually got locked into the graveyard.
Really? How did you manage that?
It was closing at 8 o'clock, and at 7:45, I remember hearing it was like beeping, and I looked up, and I didn't think nothing of it. And there was a council van that was going past, and I think that was their sign just to signal to anyone else they're going to be closing up. I disregarded it because I didn't see nothing of what the issue was. And I walked back, and I actually walked past the closed gates, and I kept on heading up. I thought, hold on, man, I must have passed it by now. Then I realized I was locked into a cemetery, and then I had to do a literal running jump over. I think the wall must have been 7 or 8 foot high. Got to the top, took a breath of air, and I noticed there's 2 sisters walking past, isn't it? And they're looking, what's this brother doing here coming out of cemetery?
After it's closed.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was your first. What were the other 2 heritage sites?
I would say also the 1894 place for London's first known Eid prayers.
Okay.
And this was in Waltham Forest in Chingford, just on the top of the borough, by Epping Forest. And that I remember one late night I was doing some archival research online, and I saw Mohammedans in Chingford praying Eid 1894. I nearly fell off the chair. I mean, I grew up in Walthamstow. Chingford was a locality we really didn't visit because it was up beyond Walthamstow. But I did visit there a few times. I remember the Scouts camp, because it was a headquarters there.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, let me go and check the local archives. So I was going through the reels of the local newspapers in the local archive, and it said Mohammedans, Chingford, Eid prayer, 1894, twice, 1895, twice, 1896, twice. And I'm like, wow. Then even when I went to Istanbul, I went to the Ottoman archives there, and I looked this up as well, and I got some more information why the Eid prayers could have potentially been done there as well. And then I spoke to the local authority, and a part of their Islamic Arts and Heritage Festival, which you made mention of. Yeah, it was actually decided that the building would get a blue plaque. Wow! So it does have a blue plaque, and as a community, to be honest, we have only about 15 plaques in the whole of Britain, which is quite weak. Of which 2 of them I've managed to secure.
Well, what do the plaques symbolize?
One is to do with the 1894 Eid prayers, and the other one is to do with a Niqabi sister who has been historically quite active in the local community. So she was seen as a person of significance who should be given a plaque. And for that, there was a panel, and I was only one of the panel members. And what happened was COVID came. Yeah. And nobody, then kind of like her nomination got lost, it did. Yeah. And nobody knew who she was.
Wow, really?
Yeah, which was quite odd, because people from the local authority knew who I was, and they could have approached me when they chose not to. And when through COVID, we tried to, the team, the panelists, we did actually try to work out what's happened to this particular plaque. Then I had to really push it through.
And then eventually,
after I think it was probably about another 2 years. Part of the problem of the unveiling of the plaque was because it was delayed from the Muslims. The sister was linked up to different mosques, different Muslim organizations, and they were thinking, if we put it up, what would everyone else say about it from the Muslim community?
Yeah.
If you've given a plaque to her, what about this person then?
Okay.
And I thought to myself, here we go back again. What would the community say?
What would the community say? Back to your roots.
Yes.
Okay.
So believe it or not, it got put onto a care home that's run by Christian.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. As a pioneer in halal tourism, what challenges have you faced and how did you overcome them?
Oh, there have definitely been challenges. I think one case I do remember when I was a tour guide, tour guide student, I was the only non-white person on the whole course. The staff themselves were all white. And when I was learning about the history, term 1, there was nothing about diversity. And I did raise it to the student rep. And I did say to them, why isn't there nothing to do with diversity here?
Yeah.
And then in term 3, what happened was they had completely revised the term 3 and they made it about diversity. So I did have an impact on that course as well, when I identified there was that challenge where diversity wasn't being addressed. And there were also some tour guides who, in my opinion, they were saying some Islamophobic things as well.
Really?
Yeah, very subtle.
Do you remember anything?
On a group, they said, I really want to go down the pub and have a nice ham sandwich for our lunch.
Oh, okay.
And they knew that I wouldn't agree with it, but they just wanted to say it.
Of course.
And that's when other tour guides actually realised why the person's saying that. And but there's also, I think, the part to do with when you're trying to establish yourself within travel.
Yeah.
Travel in UK, the tourism industry, is still quite dominated by alcohol. And as a member of UKinbound, the Travel Trade Association, when I go to some of the trips, they do have alcohol there. But for myself and my own safeguarding, when alcohol comes out, I'm out. And I'm trying to push the UKinbound to have tables that people can choose if they don't want no alcohol to be on it. That's a movement we have in Britain at the moment. People don't realise in the corporate world that the people who don't want to drink alcohol, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're Muslim. There are non-Muslims who saw what I was doing and they started to follow me out of the venue. And I said, where you guys going? Because we like you. We don't want to be around alcohol. We're leaving. I thought, I like that. Alhamdulillah. And pregnant women don't want to be around alcohol as well. There could people who want to make that conscious decision. We don't want to be around alcohol. Some people like to have that family-friendly environment. So therefore, when they book holidays, anything like that, we don't want to be around alcohol. So that was
that was a challenge.
A challenge as well. But I've worked my way around it, and I'm advocating for more events to be organised where tables themselves are alcohol-free.
Okay.
And as well as I think they should offer more non-alcoholic drinks as well.
You've received numerous awards. You've received
more
recognition.
non-alcoholic drinks. I did say that correct. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. You've as mentioned, you've received awards and recognition for your work. What achievement are you most proud of, and why?
I think it might be the first one, and that was when the company was known as Muslim History Tours. We won we were the runners-up for the world's best halal tour operator, and we narrowly missed out to a giant called Ittihad.
Oh wow!
They're travel and tourism company from that side. And I was like, "Are you serious here?" Because I was told by the organisers. So I think a small company like mine, compared to Ittihad, who has lots of funding, global reach as well. And I think that was perhaps one of the most rewarding awards.
Because I saw you recently, maybe it was a while ago, you got an award through the Muslim tourism. Or was that? I think it was with
through Crescent Rating.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the other tours was by Crescent Rating was where I was chosen as the world's best halal travel guide. As a guided somebody who delivers tours, and that was another surprise. So that was something I actually beat other tour guides from around the world. And I think what people have realized that where I've started from, initially where I started, I had my friends, they were laughing at me. They said to me, what's this bald person going to be doing? Other people who knew that I was in the Islamic trade already, they thought I was crazy. Are you leaving this to go to this? And, there were challenges, obviously, to get yourself established, get yourself recognized in the beginning. I had to go to networking, etc., do events, etc., initially. And then people saw from the social media post how I was developing this. And then that surprised everyone. Now people who come on some of the tours or who don't, for example, family members who come and goes, here, my family members are coming. This is them, a number of people, blah, 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 take care of it. Because they know what they'll be offered be something completely different than what they would themselves be able to showcase. I mean, you got to remember, I can't. I mean, it was even when I was a Hindu, and I've spoken to other Muslims when they were growing up. I go, when your relatives came over, how would you show them London? I said, well, we have to wait for our father to come home from work. And in the evenings, we get into the car and then we go around London showing them the different sites. And you stop at Trafalgar Square, take a few pictures or whatever. And that's like a selfie tour, you could say. What would modern day language would you use? But in this case, you're getting commentary in terms of the different locations where you go into. And it's from a Muslim perspective. And that in itself holds value. People appreciate that a lot more.
Coming on to that, because we were discussing this earlier. You mentioned that when you first started, your friends were wondering what you were doing. I think you mentioned they were laughing.
Yes.
Like you're leaving this to do this. We were discussing this earlier. And obviously as a startup, this is my personal point of view. Would you agree with this statement to say that when you initially start up any enterprise, your biggest critics are usually the people around you? Would you agree with that?
It can be, yes.
And did that
That just gave me, to be honest, more determination to prove them wrong. And I think all my Muslim life, I've proven people wrong what I can achieve. Even when I was at the educational place, university, we didn't have a prayer room. We had a prayer room. It was so small, it was unbelievable, and that was brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And I managed to secure a bigger room and a separate room for sisters, separate room for brothers. And even when I was at college as well, I remember when you had the Muslims using their hands and, waving around for Bhangra and everything like that. I was putting my hands out, making dua for us to be given a prayer room there. Got a petition together. Other Muslims who are practicing Muslims said, why are you doing this for, blah, blah, just be happy how you are, just settle for it, blah, blah. I was like, no. If we're supposed to be praying 5 times a day, why don't we have a designated prayer place then? Okay, even if we move from one room to another per day of the week, I'm happy with that. But eventually, we were given a prayer room.
And eventually you got it.
Yeah, we did. So that's something I managed to achieve, getting prayer rooms in different went in a college and university as well.
What did you study at university?
At university, believe it or not, it was health promotion, my first degree.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What about your next degree?
It was the same as well.
Okay, so
But I always focused upon the Muslim community, and I always looked at how they developed, and I looked at the history of Islamic medicine. My dissertation for my first degree was Islam's contribution to health, and I got the highest in the year.
Nice. Mashallah.
Mashallah. So second marker gave it the highest as well. And unfortunately, external examiner came along and gave me a 2-2.
Really?
And that completely didn't shock me. It shocked the whole department. It did. That the whole lecturers had a specific meeting about my dissertation. How come Professor Bobla, his mark dropped so low it did? And he said to me, never in his 30-year history has he seen his mark drop so low.
So what ended up happening?
It got, I think it was a 2-1 eventually got given.
So...
And people did believe it was to Islamophobia.
Wow. Did you fight it, or there wasn't much as a student you can really do?
Yeah, this is the whole thing. And there were recommendations by lecturers, look, publish your article. At least you can get some reward from it as well.
Okay. What are your hopes for the future of like halal tourism within Britain and I guess across the world?
Halal tourism globally, just to give you some perspective, is gaining. It's one of the fastest segments of travel. There are a lot more governments recognizing that halal tourism is an opportunity for them to make money. And if you were to look at Britain now, out of all the what's known as non-OIC countries, Organization of Islamic Countries, Britain is the best destination in the West, and we beat Spain as well, despite they have their heritage, Muslim heritage there. And that's what people don't realize, that there's also more Muslims coming to Britain for holiday than the number of Muslims from Britain going abroad. That shows you an opportunity then in Britain as well to fulfill that gap, and that's something that I do and have impact upon them. But at the same time, we need to create experiences here. So what happened was with myself, when I started the walking tours, I said to myself, and I said to others as well, it's not going to stop there. Then I managed to get sightseeing tour buses. And there's 4 sightseeing bus tour routes as well that I have now, daytime, nighttime, Ottomans in Britain, a local one for Waltham Forest, and a main one for London. There is also going to be, it's going to be changed as well. We've got Palestinian content in it now as well. And then it was the River Thames. So we can have a tour on the River Thames, looking at Muslim connections along there. Started to also have halal food cruises on the River Thames as well. Then it was having even Eid cruises, sisters cruises as well. And then from there, we started to do day trips by coaches outside of London. So that's something else. I'm going to build upon those this year. And we're going to go to Scotland, France as well, do a tour in France as well. And it's just going to keep building from a UK perspective. I don't know when it's going to stop, to be honest, in terms of being different diverse approaches, experiences, etc.
So though you've explained it, when you've done one, you immediately want to move on to like the next.
It's established, and then move on to something else.
Based off of that, so what advice would you give to entrepreneurs, particularly those looking to make a difference in the travel industry?
With the travel trade, you've got to have resilience to get yourself established. I had conversations with different people. Number one, somebody actually had a meeting with me, and it was through the back door, as they say, and they wanted to do cruises themselves. Done extensive research, and they did try to do a couple of Eid events. They realized, I think, the challenge, and they themselves didn't continue. There was somebody else who had a lot more money, important to say, to put into it, but then they realized the different parts where how we're delivering it. One key factor, what people love about myself, is the guided tours, and they say you can't find that anywhere else in Britain. And they said, when I'm going to do the Spanish tour, I go, there are plenty of people doing the Spanish tour already. I'm not interested in doing the Spanish tour. But they said, no, we want you to do it, because they found the delivery different. And what I've realized when I've watched a few of these Spanish tours remotely, as they say, they generally speak about Spanish Muslim history, Al-Andalus basically, and it's only within Muslim Spain. And that's it. How I make mention of the connections to do with Al-Andalus and Britain. So it's kind of like there's more context to it. If you're going from here, you're from here, it provides more value when you can actually contextualize the connections to do with Al-Andalus and Britain. And I do have another part where I do actually question the whole approach in terms of the delivery that we're promoting. And I also question the Islamic speakers as well, who keep saying, look what we gave the West, look what we gave the West. And I'm like, and they're speaking about Al-Andalus. But where is Spain? Is it in the West?
No.
It's not.
Oh, Spain is. Yeah, technically is.
Yeah. But your first instance, it's not, isn't it?
No.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
So I got to put you on my list of people then who gets it wrong. But that's the Muslim mindset. Al-Andalus has not been part of the West. It has been part of the West. And therefore, when we're looking at what we call the West, we should say non-Muslim West. Al-Andalus went, covered Portugal, went into parts of Switzerland for a couple of 100 years as well. And it went to Pontes in France. That's a landmass. That's quite big. But, that's Europe in itself. And this is only one part of Europe where Islam entered from. And we've got to remember, just as much as Islam was going to the East, people are more familiar with India, subcontinent, Malaysia, etc. afterwards as well, that side. But Islam was coming through this side as well, from North Africa into Europe as well. But that's only one of the directions which Islam had came into Europe. So therefore, when we say, look what we gave the West, that's wrong to say that. What we say is that how the non-Muslim countries in the West benefited by the Muslims who were in the West at the time. Yes, they sent their students to learn in Al-Andalus, etc. And some of the people who were observing people, for example, like in Toledo, they said there were, so the first time I went to Paris, for example, they looked at the students there and they said, what's this? You learn about art and philosophy or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I went to Toledo, which was being ruled by the Muslims. And they said, this is the place you go if you want to learn knowledge. And they knew that the language of knowledge at that time was Arabic. And they were fearful that the students, non-Muslim students who were learning Arabic, that they were learning so much Arabic that they feared they could convert as well to Islam.
Wow, mashallah.
Al-Andalus, how it inspired people from England at that time, it's completely unbelievable. But we don't really discuss this. We talk about it as if there's separate types of entities, countries. Like Al-Andalus is this, it gave us this, and this is what we gave the West. Except Al-Andalus has been part of the West.
Wow, mashallah. Looking back at everything you've done, your entire journey, is there anything you would have done differently?
Anything would have done differently?
Yeah.
I don't know really. That's a good question.
If you think about it, is there anything that you may, now thinking about it, you may not have done, or maybe there's something you could have done but you didn't do, that now you think maybe you should have done?
I've had some bad experiences, I've got to be honest, which I won't go into.
Of course.
But if there's anything else, I would have loved to have the funding in the beginning to do research and to do more tours in the beginning. But with any tour guide, as they say, you have to start from nothing and work your way up. I mean, when I did my course, there was the tutor himself, course tutor, said he has about 40 tours. I'm looking at him. You got 40 tours? Now that I've got 40 tours.
Now you understand it.
Yeah, I understand it, yeah. And he absolutely loves me how I've actually, built myself. And what the tour guiding association, the members, different colleagues to tour guides, they know that my preference is only Muslim heritage of Britain. I don't mind doing Black and Asian one, but I'm not really interested in about Georgian houses and stuff like that, etc. No, unless there is a Muslim connection to it.
Of course. How was your experience at the education fair? The event we had a couple of weeks ago. How was your experience?
It was good. It's nice and engaging. It was. And I think that's when people got to see what Muslim heritage we have, because obviously we had the mobile Muslim museum there, and we had different. It was only a small section of what is part of the collection, but then I could do a guided tour through the items, etc. And people were like, "Oh, okay, we didn't know about this. We didn't know about that. We didn't know about this." And that in itself, creates even more curiosity, and people do want to find out. I got a lot of leads from there. That's where I met you, and that's why I'm here now. But there was even an imam from Southampton. He asked me, "Could you come down and give a presentation?" I go, "Sure, why not?" That's what I do. I speak about Muslim heritage in Britain. I speak about halal tourism in Britain or globally, as well as I'm an expert at halal cruises as well around the world. And, when I started with humble beginnings, you could say, just as a tour guide, where people thought, what's this crazy person doing? I've now become the UK authority in halal tourism. That's what Visit Britain, the National Tourism Office, recognises me as.
Wow, mashallah. So your journey has essentially allowed you to make an impact on the tourism industry.
Absolutely.
Mashallah. Coming back to us, so you, as you mentioned, you met myself at the event. What do you know about us? That's the next question.
I think I began following you on social media just probably a couple of weeks before that.
Okay.
I think, or maybe 3 weeks before it or so. Because the week before I was in Mecca at the Mecca Halal Forum presenting halal tourism. I remember that. And it was like coming back, flying in the next day at the exhibition. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. Tarikhology.
Yeah.
Okay. And I thought, this is wonderful. I was so happy that there are other people in Britain who are embracing the heritage and the Muslim heritage, and they are showcasing it as well. And obviously you have your dawah work around that as well. So that was, I was happy as well. But I was extremely delighted, as I say, that somebody else, you got a whole team as well. So it's not just yourself, although you might be the, as I say, the front person. But, I love it when I see that. So it's, especially the younger generation when they're coming through now and they've embraced the heritage. What I would say is don't forget the Muslim heritage in Britain as well.
Of course. We had a very similar experience. So one of my friends is currently here. So we went to the same university, and where we were, there were no...
Which university was it?
So the University of Law.
Law, okay.
Have you heard of it?
Whereabouts?
So the campus that we went to is Bloomsbury.
Bloomsbury, yeah.
So I remember I asked more or less nearly everyone at the education fair, have you heard of the University of Law? I think I got 2 people out of maybe, 50 people, 60 people that have heard of it. So it's not surprising. But at that university, at the time that I was there, there weren't great facilities for Muslims. The men's prayer room, guess how many people could fit in there?
1.
0. We didn't have a men's prayer room.
Oh, okay.
There was, so when I joined,
a cloakroom, maybe a room cupboard.
Not even. When I joined, I became an ambassador.
Okay.
And my manager, she was kind enough to let me use her room, her office to pray. And soon on, when I joined, there weren't that many Muslims. I'll be honest. And obviously, as time went on, more and more Muslims joined. And then they gave a woman's prayer room.
Okay.
They ended up giving a men's prayer room alongside it, but I think maybe 6 months in, they realized that no one's using the room. So there's no Islamic presence on campus. So that was something that myself, my colleague here, and a few others, we sought to fix that.
Yeah.
So what a lot of universities have is I'm sure you've heard Discover Islam Week.
Yes.
So my university has never had that.
Okay.
It's never had that. So I was the first one. When I say I'm speaking myself and my team. Yeah. We were the first ones to start a Discover Islam Week at the university. And that won us Society of the Year.
MashaAllah. Because
we held a week-long set of events. And essentially it was set at a time where there were no classes. It was during one of the holiday breaks. And we just held a bunch of presentations, games. Essentially it was on the Prophet, who the Prophet was, Muslims in Britain, successful Muslim men, women. And it was essentially just to bring more engagement with the student body and Islam. And we had such an impact that we actually won. And I remember, because the reaction that my friend had at the award ceremony when we found out we won was absolute shock. I didn't believe it either. But
this is the whole thing. What I say to people, if you want to do something that's going to be extraordinary, out of this world type thing, people are going to recognize who you are. And that's going to go to your credit. But obviously, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for granting us that. Yeah.
Of course. And that's essentially where it stemmed from. And from then till now, we've worked more and more on the da'wah. But one thing which I've always highlighted is the importance of, I'm not just going to say just heritage, but history in general. The fact that I think history is severely underrated. People don't, especially people my age, they're not that interested in, like, if we exclude Islamic history, they're not interested in history in general. But the way that I've always perceived it is history is essentially who you are.
Yes.
Now, if you don't know who you are,
then go forward.
That will just create problems down the line. You have, for example, generational gaps where parents don't teach their children the culture of their parents.
Yes.
So now you have the grandkids and the grandparents, and you've got the generational gap in between. Our heritage, especially as Muslims, and I remember because I took a few friends to the mosque, the masjid, the Shah Jahan, I think the first purpose-built mosque in London.
No, Britain.
In Britain, sorry, the first purpose-built mosque in Britain. And a lot of people, they seem to be very surprised that I was in Surrey.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing which I find very interesting. But that's when I started looking more, because what I'd essentially do is I do a lot of reading, research myself. And then I, like yourself, I had a mini expedition where I take a few people there and I essentially showed them around. So we had to look at the mosque.
Sure.
We had to look at the Brookwood Cemetery.
Yep.
Because the Brookwood Cemetery has a lot of, you have Abdullah Yusuf Ali, you've got, I think, Marmaduke Pickthall. You've got like a few notable people all buried there. And obviously you could correct me because I'm not too sure about this, but the Brookwood Cemetery was the first Muslim cemetery. Is that correct?
Exclusive cemetery, I would say, yes.
Okay.
But there were Muslim graves in Britain before Brookwood Cemetery was set up.
Okay. Do you ever do a tour like down there?
Yeah, I mean, I have the tour. If people want to book it, they can book it. I'm happy to take people down there.
Okay.
And the tour, even at the masjid, takes about an hour and a half.
Okay. I mean, so that was more or less how it started. So get more and more people into first Islam.
Yeah.
But also, how does history link it to Islam and where you are? As you can see, the strapline, history simplified. We want to make history accessible and simple to the people.
I think what's helped majorly is the Turkish TV series, Portugal, etc.
Yes, it has.
And I have noticed a difference in the beginning days when people didn't really have like a history icon to look at, a Muslim history icon to look up to within the Muslim community. Soon as that flourished as well, the Ottomania, if you like, or pre-Ottomania, then people were taking the history a bit more seriously.
Have you ever had anyone come up to you and just like?
I do get asked. Sorry.
Have they ever asked you about like, oh, is this like? Do you know much about this? Like non-Muslims, have they ever come up to you and brought up that TV show, anything like that?
I don't think I've had non-Muslims come up to me. A lot of the Muslims do under the impression that I watch these TV series. I said no, I don't, and they're like, hey, why not? I just said I just don't have the time. To me, back in the days, like something like that was like watching an Indian Bollywood film. Just keep continue.
Yeah.
And I mean, I watched the first episode of the series 1 Utugu, 15 minutes, and I said, forget this.
Yeah.
I did watch the later ones to Abdul Hamid, I did. And I watched a few episodes of them because that's more modern, you could say, more factual as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that. The series, the Arsul series, whilst it's good TV, I guess you could say, it's not factual. It's not factual. It's not historically accurate.
It's more entertainment.
Yeah, it's more entertainment.
Yeah, but I do agree. Like, is it better for Muslims to watch that?
Yes.
I say yes.
Yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, general media have actually kind of dubbed it as the Muslim version of Game of Thrones as well.
Yes.
People do want to go to the film sets as well.
Yeah, I've seen tours to like those locations that they have Muslim tours to those sets. Yeah. I'm sure. I mean, fair enough. Coming back to Halal Tourism Britain, how can someone find you?
Simply just go to the website www.halaltourismbritain.com, and we've got most of the tours up there. We've still got one or two to actually. There's just newly established ones. For example, Crystal Palace.
Okay,
it's not on there at the moment, but that can be done as well. So another one for South Londoners if they want it. And I mean, you've got the guided tours in there. Virtual tours can be booked as well. Ramadan as well. We'll be pairing up with some. If people want to have a virtual tour internationally, that's something else that can be offered as well. Okay. A live virtual tour, but everything's on there near enough. Even if people want to book me to give a presentation, the Mobile Muslim Museum, or to attend a conference as well, all the information's on the website.
Yeah. And you're also on social media?
Social media, yep, under Muslim History Tours. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Muslim History Tours. On TikTok, we're Halal Tourism Britain.
Okay, so you're using your old name for one, and
it's caused a. When we speak to the Muslims, who are, they keep saying to us, "Look, we know how you are. We still know you as Muslim History Tours. That's your tour side. Halal tourism can be like the cruise side and everything else." I said, "Okay, fair point then."
Fair enough. And is there anything else that you'd want the viewers to know about what you do, or is there anything else you want to add on?
My advice to the Muslim community,
yes,
and to the non-Muslims who may be listening, please do take a look at Muslim heritage within Britain. By doing so, you're not stripping your Islam away. We have many examples of our Islamic history in Britain,
if
we were to learn about it, we wouldn't fall into the same mistakes as we are today.
Okay. Well, Jazakallah khairan for coming on, Brother Abdul Malik. I just want to thank yourself for coming onto the show, and I want to thank our audience for listening. And I'd like everyone to look at Halal Tourism Britain, inshallah, and check it out. Inshallah, if they book through you, then inshallah you let us know that we made an impact.
Yeah,
inshallah,
can do that. Alhamdulillah.
Inshallah, and maybe one day you'll see all of us on your tours.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Inshallah, because I think it would be good, especially considering the fact that we're all of us, we're all pretty young. I can guarantee you, maybe because I saw your mobile museum, I can probably guess, barring maybe one person here whose specialism is history, everyone else probably wouldn't know like 90% of the museum that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend everyone to check out the mobile museum. Everything's on your website, your social media pages. I would ask everyone to like, share, and subscribe on the video. And with that, I'd like to sign off by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.